All right, y'all. So we back here again, continuing the summer series. And today we got a very special guest, somebody, another Off the Ball Network member, somebody who works hard for the company we represent, especially with the website. A1 betting. If you need any numbers, any lines, hit up Competitive Hedge Podcast. This is a person I consider my Canadian cousin. I have since he's been down with us. Of course, I'm talking about Ken from Competitive Hedge Podcast. First and foremost, shout out to Twitter for giving my man his page back. I want to give him a clap for that.
That was crazy.
But I'm done.
I'm doing well. I still don't know why I got canceled on Twitter. I like to think that I'm very nice to everyone on Twitter, but apparently they decided to just derail my Twitter account. But I am back now with the new account and enjoying this Canadian summertime. And thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
But we're here for a reason. Like I said, it's our summer series, so we've just been talking to people who, not necessarily like-minded people, but like-minded thinking people, great at what they do in their respective fields when it comes to this sports thing we do.
Right.
I want to start to say you're enjoying this Canadian summer. Everybody has jokes about Canada and the weather. How long is a Canadian summer realistically? Like, I know everybody has their jokes about it, but how long does summer in Canada last?
Honestly, Canadian summer isn't that long. Not that that's too surprising for everyone. Like, we usually get snow up until end of April, and then I would say mid-May is when you start to get into like quote unquote summer. But I mean, even Canadian summer is not as warm or even close to as warm as what you would get down in the States. And then I would say it goes until probably end of September. So we probably get just over 4 months, which isn't too bad. Obviously, we would prefer it if there was, a little bit more, but summertime in Canada, there's just a lot of camping, hiking, all that sort of stuff.
Yep, like I say, summertime in Canada, where you just kind of prove some of those jokes, right? But I know you said you play basketball. We talking Off the Ball Network chat a lot. I know you said you play basketball. What's basketball like?
Basketball up in Canada. I mean, basketball, like, unfortunately, where I'm at in the country isn't as big as I wish that it was. I mean, I grew up in Southern Ontario, so I grew up, an hour or two probably from where guys like Wiggins grew up. So basketball was a lot bigger there, which is probably why I took to liking it as much as I did. But once I moved out to Saskatchewan, it's in the middle of the country. I mean, basketball is not the main sport here. I mean, hockey is always going to be the main sport, but football is also really big here as well. And so a lot of those athletes kind of go more the hockey route, whereas I was more so into the basketball side of things. So I would say I was an okay Canadian high school player. I'm sure if I'm in the States, I'm looking like some of those guys on those hoop mixtapes that just get dunked on all the time. But at least up here, I was a serviceable high school basketball player, so I wouldn't say that I was too bad.
That's great.
I didn't know football was bigger.
No, yeah, you just taught me something. Well, I figured hockey, but of course, right. Shout out to Canada because basketball was invented in Canada. So
I might be the worst Canadian though, because like I realistically can't skate backwards. Like I can barely skate in general, so I might be the worst Canadian of all time because I don't play hockey. I'm not that into hockey in general, and like we got the Canadian Football League. I'll bet it, but I don't watch it. Like I'm a bad Canadian. Let's be honest. I don't cheer for the Raptors. I don't cheer for the Blue Jays. Like I might as well be American at this point.
Hey, we'll accept you. We don't have a problem with that. But like, we all are part of the Off the Ball Network, which is growing every day. You do a lot of the website things as far as designing, getting people podcasts and writing up. You're definitely the head of the writing department. Just handling all that, because that's a lot of responsibility to handle. Like, what's that like? What's handling all that responsibility in your everyday life and just trying to balance that? And then do your podcast and then just, your everyday real work. What's the balancing all of that?
I mean, I do have a fair amount of time in a day in order to do those sorts of things. And I really do care about the network ultimately. And so when Chris came to me saying that, he was wanting to look more so at a different website route, I took it as a new challenge because I've been writing for years in the space. I've obviously been podcasting for years, but I'd never done the website design sort of thing. And so I just spent some time over a couple weekends just playing around with different designs, searching up YouTube videos on how to make it work. And a lot of time went into it, obviously, but it's because I care about the network at the end of the day. I know that how much people can benefit from having a place to call home, especially on the podcasting side. You know, we have a lot of different podcasts at the network that touch on a lot of different topics. And so the fact that we now have an area where we can all go and say like, hey, like if you love Hoopers, here's our page. If you love Up in Flames, here's this page. If you love Competitive Hedge over here, this is the page to go and look at. And part of it is also my wife works a lot as far as evenings go. So when I get home at the end of the day, like I can do the cleaning and cooking or whatever, but then I got a lot of free time. And so I wanted to put it more so into an area that I could call productive. And so it was a great challenge putting the website together, but really happy with how it turned out. And I think it's been great for the network in general.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. And we appreciate it too. Like whenever you ask for anything, as far as for the website, for our profile, anything, we try to send it right to you because, like say, we know you are over there working hard on it, and we do appreciate that.
Right, yeah. It definitely is. It's definitely great work that you do, and appreciate it, and it looks great. So, you know, everyone definitely should check that out. You brought up the Competitive Hedge podcast. Because of you, I got into betting a little bit more honestly because I don't really know nothing about it, but you know, just following you and like the detail that you put into your work, I'd like tried it out. How did you get into betting, and then how did that lead into you kind of switching over and, you know, making the pod about it?
Yeah, I mean, I started out podcasting obviously with a strictly basketball show, and I did it for a couple of years, had some amazing guests, but I was looking for a bit of a new challenge, and I wanted to get better in different areas. And one of the things that I've noticed even just over the last couple of years in the sports space is that betting has just, it almost consumes everything now. Like if you look at even like big networks like ESPN, Fox, whatever, like an hour before games start, it's less so about pregame coverage and it's more so about betting. And so betting was something that I've always done. I'm not one of these people that's out here throwing 10 grand on games. That's outside of my capabilities, but I've always enjoyed having that additional, you know, riding on a game, right? Because even look at right now, we're in the middle of August or beginning of August where you got no football, no basketball, no hockey. Like, how do you get into sports, especially baseball? Because baseball, it's every day and it's a grind. And so I wanted to figure out a way to get more so into sports just in general in the summertime, and one of those sports being baseball. So betting was something that I looked at right away. And you know, I've done fantasy for years, fantasy football, fantasy basketball, hockey, whatever. And so this is kind of like a little bit additional, because when you do fantasy sports, it's like, well, end of the year, that's when it pays out. If your team's no good, then you just lose. But I wanted something where I could tune in on a Tuesday night when I have this free time, maybe have a little bit more riding on it. And so that's how I got into the gambling side of things. And as I said, don't bet a lot, but it's enough where, you know, you sweat it out a little bit sometimes. And so that's why I made the switch over, and I've loved the switch ever since. It gives me an ability to do it every day as well, which is awesome.
I definitely don't bet a lot either, but like you said, it's become such a thing and so accessible. It's become so accessible. Like you can go on the app and you can bet even like $20. I remember my friend, he bet $20 on Luka scoring 40, and he won like $200. So it was pretty cool. So I definitely got into it because of you, for sure.
No, for sure. And I also think that's a good way to bring more casuals into the game because, like I say, it gives you something. It gives you a reason to watch because it gives you something like, okay, I know I bet this is what I bet, like paying attention. Like you got to pay attention because there's so many other ways to bet. It's not just the final score. You got all the prop bets from this many, you know, you got to make the stuff got to make 4.5 threes, stuff, you know, score 25.5 or more points, stuff like that. So it's so many different ways that you can bet that it's now. If you're a casual, like I say, you did it for baseball and summer sports, it's definitely a way. I feel like that's how they're going to get more casuals into the game and pay attention to the game. And it's another way for these big corporations to make money off the game, honestly.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean,
all right,
there's more states that are getting betting legal. Like I know that Massachusetts just passed theirs today. Canada, we're just starting to get more provinces as well. Like it's only going to keep growing and growing, and people love it. And as you said, like for the casual fan, it's a great way to want to tune in a bit more and maybe pay a bit more attention than you normally would.
Right. And since we're on gambling real quick, of course, as people I know, we're the Hoopers and we mostly talk NBA and basketball, but I think everybody's seen Calvin Ridley take that the year suspension for making bets on his phone. When you see that and we see that, betting is basically legal now, sports gambling is legal now, and you see that, what was your initial reaction to that? Because I know a lot of people thought that was crazy and they still think it's crazy to this day.
I'm actually in the minority where I think the Ridley suspension makes sense. And it's only because I know that he didn't bet on his own team. But if you let it slide and you only make it a game or two, let's say, for him betting, that's kind of a slippery slope that could lead to players starting to get into that space, because it is very tempting, right? If you're hanging out with your buddies, like let's say Ridley gets hurt and he's just hanging out with his buddies. It's very tough if they're sitting there with money on the line, you want to take part, right? But now that they've made it, look, if you bet on a game, you're done for the year. I think players are going to think a lot more about that moving forward. I think that suspensions in general should be higher, like the Deshaun Watson one came out. We won't touch on that today, but we see all these suspensions that happen and it's only a couple games here or there for very serious offenses, but then gambling, Calvin Ridley gets a year. So I think the Ridley one is fine if the other suspensions are a bit more, but I understand the NFL not wanting to go down that road of having players, just because you're hurting at home that you're betting on games, even if they're not necessarily your own. I think it sets a good standard moving forward for them.
All right. It's well known in the Off Ball Network group chat that you are Los Angeles Lakers fans, and we're not gonna be hard on you because they had a rough season with injuries, and I will definitely put this bad season to injuries. The Lakers, I don't think the Lakers have been unsuccessful in LeBron's time. I know they've only won one championship, been to the playoffs twice. But you get Anthony Davis, who looks like when he's healthy, he can lead their future. Regardless of how people feel about Westbrook, he's not done yet. I think Darvin Ham can get something else out of him to end his career. Honestly, the free agent signings they made last year weren't that bad, but you don't expect AD and LeBron James to be hurt. LeBron was so hurt to the point where he didn't even qualify for the scoring title last year. Right. So that just lets you know how many games he missed. Sign Darvin Ham. I know Rasheed Wallace backed off of the coaching staff, but what are your realistic expectations for the Lakers? If this is a team going to training camp, no trades, no Kyrie, no whoever they talking about moving Westbrook for, if this is the team, Darvin Ham's the head coach, what are realistic expectations for the Lakers from your perspective?
I think realistically they should be a playoff team this coming year. Now, obviously, a lot of that is going to hinge on health. If Anthony Davis is healthy for even 70 games this year, doesn't have to be all 82, but 70 games. I mean, when he's healthy, he's a top 10 player in the league. LeBron was playing great last year. Offensively, his defense has obviously fallen off, but a lot of that has to do with his age. And also, I think he saw the sinking ship last year and he wasn't ready to kill himself over playing some defense. So I think Russ is going to be the key to this year. Like, if they're going to be successful, Russ doesn't have to get back to being MVP Russ, but he's got to be somewhere between that and what he was last year. And I think it's realistic for him to get back to that point. Darvin Ham coming in, it's a nice fresh start. I don't think that Westbrook and Vogel really meshed well together. I mean, the Lakers lost their identity last year of what they were built on when LeBron came here, because once they added Anthony Davis, a lot of what they did was based on the fact that they were one of the best defensive teams in the league. Well, then when you go and make a trade for Russ, you give up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a great defender. You lose your depth in Kuzma and Harrell in order to get this guy, and then you don't have a lot of room to then go and add other players. I think that's where they ran into issues last year. So they're going to need guys like Lonnie Walker to step up and be better defensively than he was with the Spurs, and I think he could have a good impact for them. But I think the realistic expectation is that the Lakers make the playoffs next year. They don't necessarily win a title next year. I think there's just far too many good teams in the Western Conference for them to do that. But when you've got LeBron, Russ, and AD, there's zero reason why you shouldn't be in the playoffs with those three.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I don't think the Lakers have to win a championship next year. Of course, it will be nice because you would like to see that pay off, but they should definitely be a playoff team. like I said, if they're healthy, there's no reason why they're not a top 4 seed next year. Honestly, I know that's even still high expectations, but healthy LeBron, healthy AD, healthy Westbrook, like that team can still make some noise. I hope they add another shooter instead of going after Kyrie. I feel like a shooter would do that team much more justice. Another perimeter defender, another big man. I know they just signed. They just signed a big. I can't think of who it is off the top of my head. But
yeah, I can't remember either.
I don't think the Lakers are going to be bad this year. I think no matter how Westbrook played, the jokes are going to be there once he has his bad shooting night or bad turnover night or just one bad play in general. But I think the Lakers should be a lot better this year, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Healthy LeBron, healthy Anthony Davis. They're going to see the playoffs.
Sure. Like I said, we brought up, the Canadian national team a little bit earlier, just speaking of basketball in Canada. They have some players that seem like they're breaking out. Andrew Wiggins just had an amazing playoff run. RJ Barrett seems to be getting better, even though he plays for the Knicks. Jamal Murray will be healthy next year. I know there were some players who didn't play on the past qualifying team that a lot of people thought should be out there. But realistically, what's your outlook on the Canadian national team? Honestly, how good do you think they can be?
I think they can realistically have the best national team Canada's probably ever had. And I think it's because a lot of these guys grew up on Steve Nash being the back-to-back league MVP, and I think he inspired a lot of them growing up. And so we're starting to see kind of the fruits of Nash's labor, honestly, because even like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's been really good. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's a nice young piece. Like, if you put a fully healthy and committed Canadian national team, because that's been a big issue up here in Canada. It's why Andrew Wiggins wasn't a big fan favorite up here for a number of years, because we felt like, well, you're rotting away in Minnesota and you've got an opportunity to come play for the national team, push them to get into the Olympics, maybe have some national team success. And he just sat out. And I think that didn't sit well with a lot of people up here.
I feel like they need to put on that team, to put on that country jersey and go out there and represent them, regardless of what the outcome is. So Andrew Wiggins not playing, I can see that being a problem. Like you say, you got players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's becoming an amazing NBA player every year. Is going to help lead that team. Jamal Murray, RJ Barrett. I know there's a lot more players named, but that was just, I feel like that's always the key part with the Olympics. If you got those guards and those wings, if you got a big man who can rebound and play defense and not going to foul out, if you got guards and wings that can compete with all the other teams, you always have a good chance, because that's where your scoring is going to come from realistically.
Oh, yeah, and they have plenty of depth as well, like Dylan Brooks, Canadian. I know that he's not a fan favorite for a lot of people, but he is a guy that obviously plays a big role. Lou Dort being Canadian, the fact that he can defend on the perimeter is huge. You got Chris Boucher from the Raptors as well. Like, there's a lot of good players, and it's to the point where you might even have an NBA player or two that might miss out on the national team if you have all of them committing to play. And I think they got to realize that this next Olympics that will be coming up, that's probably going to be the peak of what this team can be, because we're talking about Jamal Murray, who's coming off the injury. You've got RJ Barrett starting to get closer to his prime. Same with Shai Gilgeous and Wiggins. We don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play at an all-star level. So Canada realistically should be competing for a medal at the Olympics. Like, when you name all those players, there's zero reason. Like, I don't think they're matching up with the U.S. Like, I just don't see that being a possibility, but there's zero reason that they can't be competing in a gold medal game or the bronze medal game. Like, there's a lot of good players on this Canadian team, and I think they have the ability to get there. I think they have some good coaches there, and they have some really dedicated former Canadian players that are helping out with the national team. So I think we're in a really good spot. Development's never been better. Every year, it seems like in the NCAA, you're just seeing another Canadian or two that's going to be entering the league, and it's really great to see.
No, yeah, for sure. Like I say, Steve Nash being back-to-back MVP definitely helped push that development. Having Vince Carter in Toronto for so many years and him having Toronto on the spotlight, I feel like definitely was the first push to it. But Steve Nash, who I know a lot of people want to take his MVPs away. I don't understand why. Like, I think he earned both those MVPs with those Phoenix, what he did leading those Phoenix Suns team, but definitely helped push Canadian basketball forward in a lot of positive ways.
Yeah, like Steve Nash has done a great job up here of just really trying to grow the game, and a lot of that I think just has to do with, he is a part owner of an MLS team out in Vancouver, and I think he spends a lot of time there, and he just helps to grow the game in general by being up here as much as he is, and I mean, Fresh pointed it out, like the Vince Carter effect cannot be understated enough. Toronto even winning a title a few years ago, like that really brought the country together, and I think brought Toronto to the forefront of being like a good team in the NBA. Because, I mean, if you listen to the TV up here, they would talk all the time about how the Raptors had a chance against LeBron. And like, if you were a real NBA fan, you're like, okay, come on. Like we see this video every year, DeMar and Lowry, they're going to lose to LeBron and we're going to be back here next year. And then when Masai went out, made the move for Kawhi, and then they brought in Gasol and they went on that run, you've got stadiums filled across the country, not just in Toronto, that were that into that Raptors run. And so I think that's going to pay off 10 years down the road. You're going to have kids that were sitting in those stadiums talking about how they were going to be there one day. And I think you'll start to see that a lot more kids starting to go and play in the States, because let's face it, that's where you need to go. You need to go either play G League or you need to go and play at one of these big colleges in order to get the experience and the eyes that you need on your game. So I think Canada basketball has never been in a better spot. And I think Nash has a lot to do with that, Carter, and a lot of other people that have influenced this country.
No, yeah, for sure. I definitely can see that.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you guys hear this, it'll be a couple weeks after Bill Russell's passing, who was just this past Sunday, July 31st. Like I say, you grew up a basketball fan. Of course, you didn't get to watch Bill Russell live, because that's just none of us did that's on this right now. But just in your opinion, what does Bill Russell mean? What did Bill Russell mean to the game of basketball before we get out of here?
I think he might be the biggest influence on the NBA of all time. Like I know that we talk a lot about what MJ's impact in his era and LeBron today and Kobe and his impact, but we wouldn't have African American coaches potentially if it weren't for someone like Bill Russell, the first in North American sports in order to do that. And he goes on and wins a couple championships. And just, I saw a clip earlier today, and it was Kobe Bryant chatting with Bill Russell, and it looked like Kobe, like right in his prime. And Bill was talking to him, and like Kobe read his book and was like, man, like this was just so powerful. Like it just moved me in so many ways. And it's like, when you're seeing the greats like that and how much they respect him and how much he's revered and just the way that he always handled himself, I just think that he was such a major impact to the sport. He's the winningest player in North American sports. Like that can't be understated enough. And for those people that didn't see him growing up and, they leave him off their top 10 list, like you got to be kidding me. 11 championships. Like, I don't care how many teams there were. I don't care about any of that stuff. Guy was a 5-time league MVP in his era. He won 11 titles. Like he was a special person. You can tell from all the people's lives that he touched, and he's definitely going to be missed in this world. He had a major impact for sure.
Who knows where the game could have gone without Bill Russell? Like you said, 11 championships. He was 10-0 in game 7s. 5 MVPs. The national championships, and like I said, a lot of people respected Bill Russell. I think it was a thing for the whole league to just want to get his approval. I can remember I've been watching clips of like Michael Jordan talking about him, Magic, Kevin Garnett, when he won his first championship. Everybody was trying to make Bill Russell proud, you could tell.
No, yeah, for sure. But like I say, this is a summer series. We had to do this. I don't think Ken hasn't been on any of our shows in general. I think that's more of our fault than his. We should have had him on something, but he's here now with the summer series. We appreciate him coming on. Like I say, I got his back when it comes to Canadian bacon being on pizza, because that is amazing. I don't know about any other time, but Canadian bacon on pizza is amazing. I just want y'all to know that. At some point, we're going to go up to Canada in the middle of their 2 weeks. In the middle of their 2 weeks summer, and we're just going to go kick it with them and all that. But you got anything else first?
No, just definitely appreciate Ken for coming on. I know we caught him on a busy day too, so appreciate you for taking the time. Appreciate everything you do at the network. That's it. You got anything else before we exit out of here, Ken?
No, I just want to say I appreciate you guys and everything that you do for the network. You know, I tune into your afternoon sessions all the time, and I love it. I even wore like probably my dopest hat today, trying to keep up with you guys, and I was a little bit disappointed that the hat game was lacking today. But you know, I'll carry it today just to help you guys out. But no, in all seriousness, appreciate you guys both. Love what you bring to the network, and thanks for having me on the show.
Definitely carrying the weight today.
Hey, now we appreciate that. You know, I'm John W.
Fresh X.
And it's gonna be the Hooper Summer Series.